Okay, welcome to part two of our lecture on lesson one, the communication process for purposive communication. Okay, this is now part two. So in part one, this we discussed the definition of communication and the elements of communication. Now in this part, we are now going to discuss verbal and non-verbal communication, which we have already mentioned in the part one of this lesson, that communication may be in the form of verbal or non-verbal. So in fact, in our everyday communication, we're not aware, but actually non-verbal communication dominates our everyday communication. So non-verbal, we use more non-verbal ways or cues than verbal communication actually. Okay, so in the process of communication, the speaker and listener make use of their verbal and nonverbal cues, or non-verbal verbal and nonverbal communication. So, for communication to be effective, one should make use of his or her verbal and nonverbal skills equally. So, and in using verbal and nonverbal communication, most of the times we are using it simultaneously. So that means while we are doing verbal, while we are also doing nonverbal communication. And I think it's very hard to do verbal communication without supplementing it with nonverbal communication. And it's also very important that when we use the two simultaneously, they reinforce each other, they supplement each other, they do not contradict with each other. So when you say I have a headache, you have to do I have a headache. And then you have to touch your head. Or if you're doing that, it doesn't mean that you have to do that, but to reinforce I have a headache, so you're going to touch your head. But if you do I have a headache and then you touch your stomach, your tummy, then of course that is a contradiction of your verbal and the non-verbal communication. So of course it's very important that your verbal and non-verbal communication go hand in hand. Okay, so your message will be more understood. Okay, your message is clearer. Okay, so we have to make use of them. So verbal communication uses spoken language to communicate a message or information. So spoken, so as I speak today, I am using verbal communication. If you can see my facial expression, if you can see my hand gestures, if you can see my hand gestures in the screen, so that these are the hand gestures supplement to my verbal communication, and they are called non-verbal communication. So verbal communication involves the production of sounds, words, phrases, and sentences through speech. Okay? So for speaking, so you're using, when you're doing verbal communication, you are speaking. Okay. So nonverbal communication refers to the conscious or subconscious transmission and reception of messages using the body. So conscious means you are aware that you are doing it. Subconscious, you may not be fully aware that you are doing it, but you are actually doing it. So you are in the subconscious psyche or aspect of your mind, you are doing it. Okay, but you are not really fully aware. You're just doing it maybe simultaneously or as you go through. Okay, there are times, so I may not be really aware that I am doing my this with my hands subconsciously, but now I am aware because I use this as an example. So subconsciously we have, especially if that is already a mannerism, that becomes subconscious. You're not aware that you are doing it, or you are not really consciously doing it. So it includes body gestures, facial expressions, posture, and then tone of speaking. Okay, so it is usually influenced by one's culture, values, and attitude or feelings. So body gestures, culture, example, again, the way Japanese greets is different from the way we greet. The mere movement of your eyes or your these eyebrows can already be a form of greeting, right? So what are the categories of non-verbal communication? So first we have kinesics. It deals with the body language, movements, facial expressions, and gestures. So this this type of nonverbal communication is what you call kinesics. The way our body language, the way we move our eyes, our gestures, our nose, our lips, okay, our face or facial expressions, and our gestures with our fingers, with our body. Those are what you call kinesics. Okay. And then we have also have proxemics, or refers to the amount of distance and space used in a communication situation. Um, Distance is very important in determining the level of relationship, the type or level of relationship. For example, um, we have social distance. That means people, for people who may not know each other. Because if, of course, if you do not know each other, if you do not know a person, you are not going to hold hands with that particular person, although that is touch. I mean, the distance is matters. As you can see in the first picture here, the distance is very, it's an intimate distance. So if you do not know each other, you're not going to do this, right? In this first picture, the same thing in the second picture. The third picture here, the distance between the teacher and the students, and then you have in the fourth picture, you have a speaker and then the listeners or the audience. So these are, as you can see from the distance between among the speakers here, among between the listener and the speakers here, you can see that the relationship that they have. So distance is also a form of nonverbal communication. So here, so we have the first two pictures. We have intimate relationship or intimate communication, separate from or different from the last two pictures. So you also have your haptics. It deals with communication through touch. Okay, the way we touch. So we have here handshakes. It includes handshaking, the mere touching of the baby here at the tapping of the shoulder, and you also have here hugging, and in the second picture, the picture in the middle. Well, touch is a very significant, it's a very meaningful form of communication. It's very useful, but it's also very risky. Okay, touch. Okay, is haptics. We also have chronemics, involves the role of time in communication. So for example here, as you can see, I do not discuss a lot in each of the slides. I do not discuss a lot for each topic here because we are only in doing online learning, and we are doing flexible learning, and it's a particular principle in doing lecture videos that it should be as short as possible, and time is also of essence, because the more I do, the more I discuss a lot, the more there will be more time, and of course the bigger the size of the video, and it will be hard to upload it. So time is also very important. And then of course, when you are running because you are already going late, okay, to your work or to your class, so those are the role, or the time is also of big role in communication. And we also have appearance, refers to the physical look that conveys a message. That's why appearance in itself is also a message. So there are some standards. If you're going to have a job interview, for example, you have to have a corporate or a formal look. Okay, so different when you're only at home or when you are in school. So those are different. Okay, so appearance, because how a person looks also conveys a message. You have to understand. You have to know that. Okay, your appearance is also a message. Okay, next, um, we also have artifacts. These are objects used as tools to convey a message, such as pictures, maps, and other objects. As you can see here in the second picture, in the first picture we have a map. Why is it a message? Because it provides an information. It conveys a message. And then also we have here telephones. There are different types of telephones. Here we have the biggest one, and then smartphone. Okay, so those are examples of artifacts. Okay. We also have paralanguage, refers to the non-verbal cues of the voice, such as volume, pitch, intonation, and tone. Are you okay? Are you okay? So those there may be difference in uh, the language. Okay, go out, go out, go out. So those are again simple. They are the same words, exactly the same words, but different tones or different intonation, different volume. So they may have different messages. So as you can see, It's very important. Paralanguage is also a very important nonverbal cue. Okay. So here are now the guidelines in communicating effectively, because um, noise hinders understanding. So that's why if we want to communicate effectively, we have to ensure that we limit the noise. Okay. So how do we do this? And to overcome this and avoid misunderstanding, we have to follow basic strategies in communicating. So what are these? So as a speaker, you have to follow the guidelines. Okay, these guidelines. Of course, you have to use concise and simple words. Well, the use of, in other words, you have to use as simple as possible, as concise as possible when you are communicating in everyday situation. Okay, and I believe that is also significant in every communication, except if that is really the context. If the context of your communication, example, you are writing a particular literary piece in which language is very important. Okay, art is very important in writing a literary piece. Of course, that will be an exception. But if you are doing it in a daily basis, daily communication basis, of course, you have to use concise and simple words. Okay, again, the purpose of communicating is for you to express yourself, not to impress others. So as much as possible, you have to use concise and simple words. Take note of the environment where you are speaking and adjust your voice accordingly. So if you are actually, you have to do this. The teachers do this. They are they ought to do this. You have to take a look at the environment. If you are uh, the more open the environment, the less, I mean, the less your voice is heard. Okay, because the environment is open. Okay, the closer it is, the closer the environment. If the environment is closed, your voice is easily heard. Okay, but if it's an open environment, it will be hard for you to be heard. So you have to adjust your voice. Okay, and then use verbal and non-verbal means to get your messages across clearly. But as I've said, you have to ensure that they reinforce each other. They support each other, not that they contradict each other. So they should support each other. The verbal and the non-verbal means. Consider your listener's context. State your message in a way which can be easily understood. Are you talking to a child? Are you talking to an adult? Are you talking to your boss? Are you talking to your colleague? You're talking to your subordinates? Are you talking to your superior? So you have to take a look at this. You have to consider these contexts of your listener, because of course it will really affect the way your listener understands your message. Is he your family, part of your family, or not? Okay, is he just your friend, or a colleague? Okay, a professional partner in in the business. So we have to consider those contexts. So pay attention to your listener's nonverbal cues. These signals can tell you whether your listener is bored, disinterested, or fascinated. That's why I told you, when we had our live or synchronous virtual orientation, I wanted you to turn on your camera so that I will be able to look at to know your nonverbal cues, your facial expressions, if you're already bored, if you are disinterested or fascinated. So if my joke or if my humorous stories really work, okay, so because you will not be able to say outright what you want to say in synchronous sessions because your microphone is off. Your verbal cues, your facial expressions help a lot. So we have to pay attention to this. Okay, if someone, if you're talking to someone, and then he tries to distance from you, okay, he tries to distance from you, that means he may not be, he wants to cut the conversation now. So you have to take a look at those. You have to consider those and to pay attention to those nonverbal cues. Then, if your listener does not understand your message, try to rephrase your statement or use gesture. It's very, actually, we are understood. Okay, will be understood more. We will be understood better if we are going to use gestures. Okay, if we are going to use gestures. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we have to use gestures in order for us to be more understood. If your listener cannot understand your message, you may rephrase it. Okay, maybe there's something wrong with the use of the words, or maybe there's some um, may something wrong with the use of the words or the phrasing of the sentence of the words or the the words in a sentence. So you have to take a look at those, and then of course you may use gesture in order for you to be understood well. And then after speaking, give your listener a chance to share his or her feedback, and that is very important. Again, communication is a cycle, so feedback is very important. Okay. And then this is what you're going to do if you are a listener. You have to follow the guidelines. First, you have to practice self-awareness by being conscious of your own behavior, feelings, and habits when listening to a speaker. So this will help you structure your feedback and message once it is your turn to speak. So you have to know yourself to be conscious. Am I mad? Because you have to know, because that will affect your behavior now. Am I mad? Because that may affect your the way you understand. Okay? So and that will also, once there is already, once your message, or once the way you understood the message, once your interpretation has been affected by your behavior, or by your feelings, your present feelings, of course your feedback will also be affected. So that's why you have to have self awareness once you are listening to a speaker. So avoid being distracted by listening actively and paying close attention to the speaker. So avoid being up to the point that you are no longer listening because the speaker is very handsome, is very beautiful. You are now missing the message. So you have to, and again, you listen to the message. But of course, relationships matter. But of course, you listen to message. Okay. Use non-verbal cues such as nodding to show that you are listening. That's why it's very important also, part of formative assessment. In education, it's formative assessment when you do assessment while you are doing the lesson. So it's also a form. When you're nodding, your speaker also wants you to have reactions while he or she is speaking. So that's very important. Focus on the speaker and maintain eye contact during the conversation. That's very important, so that the connection between you two runs smoothly. And in the Philippines, that culture, it's very important. I think it's disrespectful if you do not do eye contact to persons you are talking to, right? I mean, some say, yeah, some consider it as a disrespect if you are being talked to by a person and then you are not looking at that person eye to eye, or you are not doing eye contact. So that could be some sort of disrespect, and it's also very important for the connection to be smooth. Okay. And then, if unsure of what you heard, clarify with the speaker if your understanding of the message is right before responding. So it's very important. Clarify, especially if there are noise or hindrances. Okay. And then provide feedback to let the speaker know that you listened to and understood what he or she said. Okay, so that's it. Those are our lessons. Second part of our lesson for the communication process. So that's our lesson one, the communication process. Thank you very much.